going, everybody? Glad to be back with you. So it's often thought of as perhaps unfair to compare a company's top tier phone to another manufacturer's device that, well, isn't their top of the line offering. But the OnePlus 8 and the Samsung Galaxy S20 share so much in common, from processor to the 12 gigabytes of RAM, to the fact that OnePlus has even taken some of its design cues from Samsung recently. In fact, the first thing I thought when I held the OnePlus 8 in my hand is how much this thing reminds me of last year's Galaxy S10 Plus, save for the singular front-facing camera, which is more reminiscent of the regular S10. The OnePlus 8 has almost identical curvature to the glass front, the same shape, even the same polished metal chassis. Somewhat ironically, Samsung dialed back the curved edges with its S20 line, leaving just a slight slope on the sides from the front, but with increased curvature on the back, which in turn has rendered the metal chassis looking extremely thin on the sides. And while the phone is nice overall, I'm not really a fan of the thinned out chassis. I prefer the sides to be a more uniform size, matching the top and the bottom. Samsung also took some flack for its color options this year, with this smaller S20 only coming in pastel blue or pink, which had some kind of light refraction on it that reminded me of a CD, as well as this cosmic gray. The OnePlus 8, on the other hand, pairs its more traditional black color option with this very eye-catching interstellar glow. I like the color, but it'll definitely get noticed wherever you go, for better or worse. And be aware that the finish is very mirror-like, which will attract fingerprints that are more or less visible depending on the angle. Despite the S20 line also sporting a glossy finish, fingerprints are a lot less visible, as the glass back is not so much a mirror. Call quality on both devices is great. I have the T-Mobile version of both phones, and I'm happy to report that OnePlus seems to have fixed the awful speakerphone quality of previous models. Speakerphone calls on the OnePlus 8 were crisp and clear both ways, and there's very little difference to tell between these two devices in this respect, so you'll be fine with either one. The speakers themselves are solid too, with the Galaxy S20 sound being downright elite for a smartphone. Though not quite as rich sounding, the OnePlus 8 speakers are fine too, and there's a noticeable improvement from last year's OnePlus 7. On the software front, OnePlus's Oxygen OS is as fast as ever. Dark mode integration is fantastic, apps open in an instant. But notice I only said fast, not necessarily smooth. Now this isn't something everyone would notice, so I'm kind of nitpicking here. But though OnePlus has improved its animations, they're still a little bit janky. They seem to move at one speed, no acceleration or deceleration, unlike what you'd see on flagship devices like the Galaxy S20, where animation smoothness matches this 120 Hz display delightfully. Now, the OnePlus 8's 90 Hz display is also smooth. It's just that the animations aren't quite as polished as those on the S20. It's not something that affects performance at all, but the aesthetics of the experience are important to some. And speaking of those displays, while both are fantastic and you won't be disappointed in either one, Samsung's AMOLED display running on the S20 is ever so slightly sharper and more vibrant. Now that could partially be down to the better pixel density, as the 1080p 120 Hz display is a bit smaller than OnePlus's 1080p 90 Hz display. Now you can even switch the S20's display all the way up to 3200 by 1440, but then the refresh rate has to go down to 60 Hz. Not worth it in my opinion. Stick to 1080p and 120 Hz all day, especially on this size of a display. And while I can tell the difference between the S20's 120 Hz and the OnePlus's 90 Hz, the difference is more drastic between 60 and 90 Hz than between 90 and 120 Hz. Going back to software, Samsung offers a bunch of extras to the experience, but probably nothing you absolutely have to have. The OnePlus 8 offers excellent customization, plus useful extras like the ability to run 2 instances of your social media and messaging apps, which of course the S20 allows as well, and the ability to change accent colors and icon packs without having to use a third-party launcher. That's something I wish Samsung would incorporate to One UI. When it comes to cameras, both of these offer all the basic features you'd expect on a 2020 flagship, including both an ultra-wide and telephoto lens on the back. And unless you're looking for the absolute best camera quality on a smartphone, the OnePlus 8's offering will be more than adequate for most people. Camera quality has improved over its predecessors, the OnePlus 7 and 7T, but I do think the S20 shots are a bit more detailed and do better with exposure on default settings. You can decide for yourself with these samples. Now, I thought I'd be talking about 5G a bit more in this review, but the fact of the matter is 5G coverage is still not all that impressive, even here in the Washington, D.C. area where T-Mobile's 5G network was quick to deploy. Most of the time, speeds haven't really been any faster than on LTE on either of these phones, and latching onto a 5G connection can be a bit finicky, to the point where if I'm leaving an area with no signal, like my garage, both phones can have a bit of a problem reconnecting to data services. It doesn't do this when I have the phone set to LTE instead of 5G. However, when you do hit one of those 5G sweet spots, these phones blaze. Will it affect your data usage and real-world performance? Probably only if you're downloading a large file, but either way, it's fun actually seeing what the 5G phone in your hand is capable of. 5G coverage should improve in the coming months too, as T-Mobile begins to light up Sprint's mid-band 5G network following the approval of the two telecom giants merger. That's because the OnePlus 8 can actually connect to that mid-band 5G. For now, both only support T-Mobile's low-band 5G, but again, only the OnePlus 8 will be able to take advantage of Sprint's mid-band 5G once T-Mobile begins utilizing it. And while that's something to keep in mind if 5G is that important to you, I really don't think you'll notice much of a difference in everyday use, as we're still at least a year or two away from really taking advantage of what 5G has to offer. Battery life on these devices is fine. I wouldn't say either is stellar, but I did seem to get more juice consistently from the OnePlus 8. Now it is sporting a larger battery at 4,300 milliamps versus the S20's 4,000 milliamps, and I'm guessing pushing that 90 hertz display isn't quite as taxing on the cell as having to power a 120 hertz display. I consistently surpassed 4 hours of screen on time with the OnePlus 8, while with the S20, it's been a struggle to reach that 4 hours. Now, it's not an issue for me as I regularly have access to power, but it's something to keep in mind if your daily routine outside of COVID-19 life requires you to be away from any power supply for any significant period of time. The S20 does let you charge wirelessly, however, including fast wireless charging. If you wanted to do that on a OnePlus device, you'd have to get the OnePlus 8 Pro instead. But if wireless charging isn't something you particularly use anyway, you'll be happy to note that the OnePlus 8's Warp Charge 30T can boost your battery from 0 to about 70% in just around 30 minutes. The S20, of course, offers a highly customizable always-on display, a feature I've been happily taking advantage of on smartphones all the way back since the Nokia Lumia 920 in 2012. And while that doesn't hit the battery too hard, the OnePlus 8 doesn't include the feature at all. Aside from its ambient display, which may be fine for some, but definitely doesn't serve the same purpose as an always-on feature. The fingerprint scanner on each of these is straightforward and reliable, though the optical sensor on the OnePlus 8 5G may be a hair faster than the ultrasonic one on the Galaxy S20. I like to scan 2 instances of each thumb just to streamline things further. If you don't mind the less secure face unlock, pairing it with lift to wake on the Galaxy S20 is also a joy. So at the end of the day, you really can't go wrong with either phone. Neither has any major flaws. The experience is consistent throughout, and both handsets offer a balanced set of features and extras to help you put your own personality on them. Now you can probably find some deals on the S20, but at $699 for the OnePlus 8, and a full $300 more for the S20 at T-Mobile, you're going to have to ask yourself how much more a slightly better display, a flatter display, a moderately better camera, wireless charging, and always-on display are worth to you. Because those things aside, the two devices are quite comparable. Now, it's worth noting that I personally experienced no issues with accidental touches on the OnePlus 8's more curved display, but maybe that's from years of experience with Samsung's various curved displays. Mileage in that regard seems to vary greatly. If you have the funds to buy either one, I personally would pick the S20, but admittedly, the better overall value here probably rests with the OnePlus 8. I appreciate you guys checking out this comparison review. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments which of these devices you went for, plan to go for, or would go for. It'd be fun to hear from you. Stay safe, everyone. I'll see you next time.